I'd like to also welcome everyone here today. This is so exciting. There's so many artists here that I know and I just think are awesome. So I'm just so excited to be here. And I want to thank you, Dr. Richardson, for your kind words and for starting Launchbox Ladies. We have an amazing panel here of women like me who are artists and entrepreneurs. And so I'm just going to introduce them in alphabetical order. And I do want to say that they all have beautiful, interesting last names that I am going to say wrong. So just, I never was good at languages, and if they want to correct me, I'm just going to open that door for them. So first, I am pleased to introduce Krista Kraftischen. She's a principal at the Spillman Farmer Architects. Krista came to America from her native Germany in 1990 and has advanced to become Spillman Farmer's first female associate in the firm's 91-year history. So welcome, Krista. And next is Kiana Harnemont, who came to America also, but she came here from her native Iran in 2012 after receiving her graduate degree in photography. And she's now a mixed media artist who works by day up at Penn State main campus in the Digital Fabrication Lab. So welcome, Kiana. And no one's corrected me yet, so I'm doing okay maybe. And finally, I'd like to introduce Donna McGovero, who after decades of working as a graphic designer at ad agencies and corporations throughout the community, she opened her own design company called Sheer Brick Studio, that's in Bethlehem. And she's also known as Ms. Information on the podcast Geologic. So welcome, Donna. Okay, so welcome, and here we're going to start with one of the things that I'm dying to hear from you all about. Dr. Richardson talked about or listed 10 ways that entrepreneurs and artists are similar, and or that we operate on that same level. And I love that list, and I was really intrigued with it. And the one thing that stood out to me the most was obsession. Because I feel like I get so obsessed. When I'm in my studio, I don't know what time it is, I don't eat, I don't go to the bathroom, I don't do anything. I'm just in that studio just making things. And I lay at night awake sometimes figuring out all sorts of mechanical things in my mind. So I would like to hear from each of you. What on that list maybe you found to be the most intriguing? Anyone want to start? Oh, yeah, turn your mic on. Is my mic working okay?
Not just because it was the first one and that was easy to remember, but I would say intuition was the one that I felt was most important, because everything else falls in line after that. You can have the numbers, you can have the demographics, you can have everything in place, but if your gut's like, don't do it, it's just, it's right. Not a good idea. So I think intuition is the most important thing to listen to.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah.
I have to add to obsession.
Is that?
Is it on? It's green, but. No?
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I have to just be really close. Obsession definitely needs to be there, and it's like my profession is so consuming, and there's always something new and constantly changing, and the world is all around you, so you constantly see architecture. And it just sometimes gets a little much, and my family always thinks I am absolutely obsessed, and they would rather see that this isn't happening all the time, because we go on vacation and all I do is look at buildings and I'm in awe and I'm taking pictures, and my daughter's always like, why aren't there never people in your pictures? So it can get in the way sometimes.
Yeah. And what about you, Kiana?
So the thing that I personally have found the most important has been getting attention. So there's always this misconception of, if you're an artist, you go to your studio and you work hard and you make the best work, which is true. But you also, at the same time, have to try really hard to get the work out there, because it doesn't matter if you have all the masterpieces in the world in your studio if nobody sees it. So you need the attention to get your career forward.
Right, right. Well, you must have known the next question that I'm going to bring up because you've beautifully segued. Because so technology does allow us to share our work so easily on social media, and you know, with our websites and all those sorts of things. And as a matter of fact, before I go into asking you a question, as a gallery director here at Penn State, I have connected with so many artists that I just wouldn't have thought of to curate into an exhibit because of their Instagram account or because of their Facebook account or because things are popping up all over the place. So it is so wonderful for us as artists to have those opportunities, whether it's more of a business focus or a more creative outlet. But how do you, as a fine artist, and as a multimedia artist in your field, how do you connect, get that sort of critical feedback that you might not get because you're in your studio and you're promoting out through social media, but you're not maybe going to galleries or going to, curators all the time? So how do you deal with that?
So I try to go about this in different ways because it is really important to get critical feedback as an artist, or any other creative field. It's very important to hear other people's professional opinion. So one of my go-tos is just people around me, other professionals, other artists, my colleagues and peers, and they're actually at your disposal, so you can always go and talk to them. And almost everybody is so happy and so nice to take an hour out of their day to talk to you, and I think we should all do that for each other. Another thing is, I personally always try to look for opportunities to exhibit my work, or to get into a publication or interview, anything. And when you get into those opportunities, more things follow up. So for instance, whenever I'm in an exhibition, and especially in academic settings, you end up having an artist talk, which is a great opportunity because you get to talk about your work, but also then there's questions and conversations. And when I'm proposing an exhibition, I always try to include that I'm personally looking to create a conversation.
Right, great, that's great. So in a little bit of a different way, I'm going to direct this to Krista and Donna. Your work as an architect and media artist, what do you? Yeah.
That's an interesting way to put it. I just think of myself as a graphic designer.
Graphic designer, okay, great.
But
so
I have a lot of identities.
Right. But so in your fields, you are combining your vision, your creative, amazing vision, with the needs of your client. And so the client is coming to you with certain expectations and certain wants. So how do you merge those two, which I could consider to be kind of opposite sometimes or difficult?
Well, if you see yourself as somebody of just creating a vision without your client, then that could probably quickly happen. But that's not exactly how we work. We always work with the client. We don't start thinking about a project unless we had a first conversation with somebody. So there has to be constant feedback. For example, we're working right now with Penn State Lehigh Valley on an addition for this building, and we had user group meetings quite extensively where we heard from everybody what they're thinking this should be. And so we have to process all that information and then create a vision together, right, on what this actually should be. So we don't just do something like in our little office area all by ourselves and we say, this is the vision we have for you, and now you better listen, and this is what. But we're trying also to educate our clients a little bit as we go down that path. And I think together, we also get educated by our clients quite a lot, depending on what we're doing. So it's a partnership, and together you create a vision. And I think it's so much better when more people work together than when you're doing it all by yourself.
I agree completely. And my best work is collaborative, because I can only know so much about what a client does. And I can do all the research And usually I have to plow through anything that's really obvious. Like when you approach a topic that's new to you, you have to get through those first couple layers of all the cliches. So I can't get to the meat of it unless I get questions answered by my client. And I really hate no parameters. I don't know why people are like, I love the outside the box. Like, really, come on. You need some parameters, or
Right,
you're just
right.
you'd be spinning endlessly.
It's like problem solving then. when you
Yes,
have the
exactly,
parameter, right,
exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and having a framework of some sort is so helpful. Of course, the other side of this are the clients that you have to winnow out. You have to know how to get away from a project or a client that's going to be really problematic, not pay, be difficult, say, I really want something funky. They don't mean that. They never mean that. And I don't know what that means anyway. That's like a red flag right there. So, yeah. And I've had to fire some people. I mean, clients. It is really, it's very satisfying. It's very empowering. Try it sometime. How many graphic designers are here? Anybody?
Great question.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks. You can come and talk to me later, and I will try to dissuade you from what you're doing. No, no, of course.
Great. Thank you. Good answers. So clearly technology allows us to create a new human experience, and as reflected in actually all of our work, I stay current with, well, for one thing, it's so great working at a university because there's always new input. But one of the things that I've been doing recently in my work is incorporating augmented reality. Now, I'm dipping my toe into this. I'm not an expert, but through my colleagues, some colleagues here, I've been able to create, I don't even know how to explain it. Should we play that video and then I'll kind of explain what I mean? Nothing in an artist's life can compare to that time of complete, uninterrupted exploration, where all that matters is the process of experimenting, learning, failing, and starting over again. This was that time for me when my past experiences embraced my heart to form this lifelong creative trajectory of desirable burdens. My beautiful female mentors protected and prodded me through this journey of finding my voice. So what that is actually is, I don't know how to say it, phone recognition. Or if you're a person who has an app downloaded on your phone or an iPad, but I'm developing it thinking of a phone, a smartphone, and you came up to the piece of jewelry, and the app recognized it, you would then see these extra things appear and hear my story. So that's some way that I'm thinking of kind of pushing that way of helping people understand, what I'm trying to communicate. And I see maybe in the future that all artists would have an app. So every artist would have an app, and it'd be so common that we'd all be able to walk up to their work of art and be able to hear more about it, whether it's a poem or information. So that's what that's about, and I'm having fun exploring it, but I'm really just done a little tiny bit in this so far. But anyway, with that being said, how about all of you? How do you stay current? What is it in each of your individual areas that you could share with us? I'm looking at Kiana. I don't know.
So I look at technology as these tools that are being added to the older tools that we had. So these are extensions of our previous tools. And I'm trying to think about the first time that I was introduced to digital fabrication and technology was quite a few years ago. And what I wanted to make was a replica of a ethanol frame. And I had two options. One was to find a frame that I really like and then go spend a few years, learn how to carve, become a master carver, and then make my frame that way. And another way was to find a frame in a museum and make a mold of it and cast it, and that would be limited to exactly the same size. but neither of those two options were really a possibility. But I became familiar with 3D scanning, so from there I was able to scan a part of the object, and in the computer 3D modeling and being able to make the final through digital fabrication. So that's one way to look at technology as these tools that make the old processes much faster, better, more efficient. And another thing that I do, I use, and you'll see in some of the slides, a large lantern, for instance. I use parametric design, and I use calligraphy and old patterns, and I create forms that were not possible to make without the technology. So that's the ways that I use technology in my work.
Because you use a lot of new technology in your work.
Technology is like in our world all the time.
Is that working?
Okay, I'm
there-
trying.
yeah.
There we go.
I think it takes
I
time
think
to
there's-
warm up.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it is. There's a little delay. So as an architect, you are working with technology all the time. And we used to do two-way printing, and now we can do three-way printing. And we have programs now that see everything three-dimensional. And we just purchased VR equipment in our office. So it's partly on how we explore our design, but it's also on how we actually present and interact with our clients. And that's extremely important to us, because if we talk about a vision and how to create something, we have to make sure that our clients understand what we're talking about. So all this equipment and technology helps extremely with bringing that across and understanding. It used to be when people were just leaning over a piece of paper and looking at the drawing and you tried to explain, people glazed over. They didn't really understand what exactly you were talking about, and they would sign off, and then you would build it, and they're like, that's not exactly what I thought it was. It could happen, right? Mm-hmm. But today, because we have all this capability, we can make you walk through this building like with a video, but now also with just putting a headset on, and you feel like you're right inside of it, and you're walking through it. That fear is gone. So it helps us tremendously, and we have to embrace the technology that's out there, and we have to push towards it, that there is new technology coming, and see how do we use this for us. And I'm sure that's true with every profession out there. You have to be open to it, and you have to look what's next. And you have to make that commitment within your business that you're going to purchase these things and that you explore these, and not say, no, I've always done it this way, and I'm sure I'm going to be fine. That's just not how this world is going, right? And so embracing technology is very important.
Do you want to ask me a different question?
No.
Or
Can you
okay.
answer that? Or
how technology influences what I do?
how or what new technology has really been. I mean, you have probably tons of examples with your podcasts. And your
Okay. I was wondering which angle. I can't do what I do without technology,
right.
because, in fact, it's so technology-based that older designers have to encourage younger designers to go back to the pencil and do and creative concept, with thumbnails, and I can also say that I feel like materials are becoming more dear and precious, and like tactile. Like I don't books will never die. That I don't believe they will. Yes, things will be digitized, but the tactile object will be more dear than ever. So that's what I do as a graphic designer, but I also help produce a podcast, the Geologic podcast, that's been around since 2007. So I've been involved in social before it was called social, or back when people resisted calling it social media, because that was like, desktop users use social media, we real people, everybody has their niche. So anyway, we started the podcast in 2007 when people were like, podcast, what's that? And we're like 5.5 million downloads by now. We had a slow start. We didn't have 1 million downloads till about 4 or 5 years in, and then things really heated up. So,
wow. That's great. And I want to come back to what you said at first, because I know what you mean about, we have to teach our students. Even here, we have students who, they don't want to draw. They want to do everything on the computer. And it's such a value. And so it's so precious to be able to do those things and to recognize their importance.
Well, I think sometimes, too, if you're going right to computer, you also, and that's the only world you live in, you don't understand what happens when the file leaves your hands and something has to happen to it.
Right.
And so that following the piece into the world, like to the printer, and what they have to deal with will help inform what you have to do.
Right. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around forever. I got my degree when dinosaurs walked the earth, and there were no computers. I know that's shocking.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know if you designers know what I'm talking about, but to silhouette a photo, was on a paste up, and there was a plastic overlay with something called rubylith or amberlith that you had to cut out with an exact. You're laughing. You know what I'm talking about. And when I have to speak to young people in this profession, I bring this stuff with me, and they're like, "What is this voodoo?" But yeah, so now a computer can do that. But because I did that by hand, I kind of understood what was happening on the computer, which it was fantastic. I was like, "Oh my God, I don't have to gouge myself with a blade anymore."
Yeah.
So anyway,
Right.
yeah. So it's just a tool. It really is. It's a fantastic tool, but it's just a tool. So I started using computers in like 90, 91, and yeah, I've never looked back. I have such an array of technology that I've used, and I get nostalgic for the old centrists. I do, and like all the copy machines we've been through. When you look back, when you've been doing this a while, and you look back at the media you've used, it's sort of like the timeline of inventions.
Right. Krista, you had something you wanted?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said how our generation started out differently, and then the computer came about, and we had to learn it. We were kind of forced, and I remember very much I came to the United States, and I started for Spillman Pharma, and the first question I got is, "Are you interested in working on the computer?" And I'm like, "I really love hand drawing." And I said, "Sure, maybe half a day." And from that, it was pretty much quickly computer all the time. There was no half a day anymore. But it was great because you saw the capabilities of it. But now looking back, when we get somebody who starts in our office and has never really drafted by hands, we encourage them to sometimes go back and learn those old techniques again, because we feel like that there's a different feeling about how this end product is supposed to look and feel, and when it's done on the computer. So we like that somebody gets their artistic juices going and tries all different kind of techniques before saying computer is the one, right, that takes me to the next level, because it needs to be a combination of all of those.
That's a really positive kind of hazing.
So Kiana, you get to work in a digital fab lab, is that what it's called? What tools do you find most valuable? And maybe just share for our audience like some of what those tools are.
So I work with different digital fabrication technology, including 3D scanners, 3D printers, CNC routers, laser cutters, and actually a lot of my time in the day spent with other people, either trying to teach them how to use different machines or trying to problem solve their project. If they're building a certain project, what is the best machine? And that really has helped me learn more about each particular machine, which leads me to the answer that I don't know if I have a favorite machine, because each one is good at doing something and not so good at doing other things. So
Right,
all very
which
different.
goes back to what these ladies are saying too. They're tools. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the male-dominated world of the arts and architecture. We got to go there. And how do you, each of you, ensure that you're being taken seriously, or what, share with us some of your thoughts on that. We're going to start with Krista. See, it's got to warm up. Yeah, leave them on. And
Eventually you hear me better.
There
There
we
we
go.
go. So when I started in college, it was pretty much 50-50. And I didn't think there was any problem at all because we were all equal. Well, when I came out of it, I pretty much went into male-dominated world. And I started to realize pretty quickly, especially if I had to go on the construction site and I had to talk to a mason who was maybe 50 years already in business, and I'm telling him, well, could you please do it this way? And he'll be like, I've always done it this way. Why am I listening to this young girl? What does she know? And I would go back, and my boss would say, well, you're just going to have to put your foot down and explain that this is what you learned and that you have to make him understand what he's going to be doing. So you kind of like learn to put your backbone. And but during the years of my profession, so women kind of like trickled down because they would start in business and then eventually start a family. And architecture is so consuming that it's difficult for a lot of them just to have a family at the same time, so they would give up. And then I would have a hard time coming back and saying, well, this technology has changed because it's so quick. And we were talking about, right, computer came now to play, and during that generation, if they hadn't learned it, they felt like hesitant to come back and say, okay, I'll try it, but now how do I get into this? So luckily, over the years now, with the younger generation come to play, we see more and more women back into our profession, which is wonderful. And we're really trying to embrace that in our office and mentor them and make sure that there is a way for them to stay in the profession and have a family at the same time. I think that's extremely important. You don't have to feel like you have to sacrifice one for the other.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Donna, do you have anything?
So many years ago, my first job was I was a water safety instructor and a lifeguard, and I had all the accreditation, and I thought, I'm going to apply to lifeguard at the local pool. And the other person applying was a guy with no experience. I was Red Cross certified. I was teaching life-saving and the whole thing. And he got the job. And I was like, this is how it's going to go, right? And I wasn't having it. So I honestly, I'm aware of it, and I've been in situations that were a little problematic. Like at one point I was in a bullpen, and it was all female, and this is for real, they brought a guy in to take care of the whole, make sure that we were, to round us up and make sure we were behaving. That's some shit. That really is. Sorry. And we didn't love it, but we just dealt with it. That's really,
Right.
You deal with it.
Right.
And I would try to not pay attention to it and just do what I'm doing. And sometimes it was painful, and sometimes I won. Mm-hmm. So I say break the glass ceiling.
Right. Amen.
Right? Break it. It's the only way you're going to see the sky.
Right. Right. Good. Kiana, so as an artist, or that you're producing your work, or in your job at the university, do you have any? And then I'm going to go into another question for you. But if do you want, let's go right. Okay. So Kiana's work, and I'm directing this to her, and it does reflect growing up in a patriarchal society that you've talked about, and you definitely address this in your work. So share with us, with our audience, what that's about.
Yes, so I grew up in Iran, and it is a patriarchal society. Women's rights are not equal to men's rights. So going outside, you have to, for instance, there's a rule of mandatory hijab, so you have to cover yourself. And a lot of women, or people in general that fight for women's rights, they get arrested. So it's a tough situation, but there are still women that are trying, and I feel like that's the least that I could do, is to talk about it. And that's the smallest thing that I could do, is my voice through my work. And as far as the not so much patriarchal, but the male-dominated art world here. I was actually just reading recently that about 51% of women are artists, but the numbers of men that are in galleries and have worked in museums and special collections, etc., are far more than women. And I don't think it's because we have better male artists. I don't think that gender should be a deciding factor in what art is better. So it is up to us at this point to, first of all, we need to try, be confident, and we need to push this, as you said, break the glass ceiling. And I think that we are having more and more women creators and gallery directors and museum directors. So I think we're going towards a better future.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're coming to the end, and can each of you give us a thought or a piece of advice to leave with our audience on navigating their careers in the arts, or being budding entrepreneurs? So anyone wants to just leave a word of advice to our wonderful audience?
Well, I would say be never discouraged. If there's a passion you have, and first of all, find your passion. Know what that is. And then when you have it, go for it. Because if you have a passion in you, you're going to be good in it. And just keep following it, and don't let anybody discourage you. I remember when I said I want to go to college, I was first generation college in the family. My aunt said, what are you going to do that for? You're going to come back and you're going to get married and have children and sit at home. And luckily, my mom was really encouraging and said, no, that's not going to happen to her. I know her. So she understood. And because she knew I had this passion in me since I was probably 10 years old, I wanted to be an architect. And that just made my whole entire way. This is what I wanted to be, and this is what I focused on. And I tried to understand this is how I get there. So whatever it is that's in you, just go for it. And the rest will just come. And people will understand and see it and feel it when you're there and you have this passion. So don't ever get discouraged.
I'm going to say adaptability is important, because I think that would be the same for all our professions, actually, especially with technology. A friend of mine wrote a song for his father who turned 60, and the song was about all the inventions that happened through his father's life. And then he asked me to type this out and frame it. It was massive. It was just like so much happened in those 60 years. And what's interesting is, as the time went by, like by the time we got to the fourth decade, there were so many more inventions compressed in that amount of time. So that's going to keep going like this. I mean, as long as we take care of climate change, or else we're just going to be developing underground bunkers. So yes, I would say adaptability. Be willing to change. Know your passion, and then don't say no. Go with it. I mean, it's going to hurt. It's going to be a little painful. It's going to be outside your comfort zone. But when you get to the other side of that moment where you had to change, you're going to be like, yes, I'm glad I did that.
Thank you. Very good. Yeah. Any words?
Well, I think one thing that I would say is be true to yourself. And if you, especially as an artist, if you have anything that you want to talk about, really follow that, and never get discouraged, as Krista mentioned. And also, you're gonna hear a lot of no's. Do not get discouraged by that. There's far more no's out there than yeses, so that's normal. That's a part of it. Just take it. If there's any feedback, take it in, and then compare it to what you're doing. If it's helpful, apply it to your work, and then move on.
Good. Thank you. Okay, well, thank all of you for sharing this time with us. And you've seen images of our work on the screens. I think we all have some things out in the lobby area for you to pick up or look at, or sign up on our email list, or whatever you'd like to do. And I hope you follow us on our websites and Facebook or whatever you like, and maybe look at a building once in a while and go, wow, right? But thank you, everyone, and thank you.
How about a hand for our panel today, everyone?